Hello everybody, I'm Joanne Haigh, and you welcome our viewers and listeners in Barbados and around the world to another edition of Face It and Fix It on CBC TV 8, CBC Barbados Facebook and YouTube, and of course Q100.7 FM radio. Now, what's on my mind this morning? I can tell you supermarkets, cost of living, food. I went to the supermarket a couple of days ago and the prices are through the roof. And vegetables are fairly expensive, more so than the last couple of weeks. So I can actually see the difference in the prices. And we need some clarification from the Minister of Agriculture what we are doing about this. And I'm on a good note, we can tell you that the Minister of Agriculture will be coming to our show next week to discuss this matter. But in the meantime, we do have this morning on our show a special guest. She is Harvey. She's with Agrotourism, an agrotourism specialist with the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture. And I'll repeat that again, Harvey with the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, and she is an agrotourism specialist. In addition, we have yours truly on the show, our producer, Peta, Alleyne, as well as media practitioner Cassandra, Crawford. As you know, there's a lot of incorrect information going out there about the pandemic and the effects of the pandemic, and we're going to talk to them about how it has impacted them and about sharing information and what do they do in order to get the information right. And of course, we know that yesterday was the inaugural virtual church service between Ghana and Barbados. Interesting idea, for sure. Forward-thinking and timely, definitely. Well, let's face that and fix that with some of the negative comments that we were seeing on our social media pages when we put out the service and we advertised the service. Not so much the actual service itself, because I saw some pretty positive comments there, but when CBC advertised that we were going to have a church service between Barbados and Ghana, as you know, we're building our relationships, and we do have a High Commission to Barbados in Ghana. We heard so many, or should I say we read so many negative comments. So we're going to discuss that today, and we're going to see how we can fix those negative comments and probably give people a different mindset and a different way of thinking. So to give us a call, please pick up the phone, dial 228-5562, and if I might mention, the discussion about the church service will be with Senator Reverend Dr. John Rogers. He will be joining us, and we can be reached at 228-5563, 228-5562 if you want to send us a WhatsApp message. Of course, if you want to send us a comment on Facebook, it's CBC Barbados, and you can leave your comments right there. When we come back, we will have Harvey from the American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, and we will be discussing food, the pandemic around the region, what are the solutions and what are the problems. We'll be back. Welcome back. We are now joined with Ina Harvey, Agrotourism Specialist for IICA. And good morning. Are you there with us?
Good morning. I'm here.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm happy to be here with all of the viewers and the listeners this morning.
Well, we are happy to have you with us because we've got some serious issues going around the world, as you well know, and particularly in the Caribbean region, as it relates to things like even climate change and its impact on our ability to grow food. We know we had some problems in St. Vincent with the ashfall that would have impacted their ability to produce crops at that time. And I know your organization lends a lot of support to the 34 member states, I believe. And we want to ask you, first of all, the impact on the region with this pandemic as it relates to what the organization does.
Thank you very much for having IICA this morning as the representative for the office here in Barbados. I'm very happy to say that despite all of the shocks that the COVID pandemic has wrought on the agricultural and rural sector across the region, IICA in 2020 responded with flexibility and alacrity. And the first thing that we did was to facilitate dialogue at the ministerial level, as well as with the women in farming, the youth in agriculture, with rural groups, with communities. We established a special COVID fund valued at $500,000. And with that fund, we supported offices, especially with respect to self-reliance in food security, food and nutrition security. We also launched a crowdfunding campaign, and Antigua and Barbuda and Haiti were the two countries targeted for that crowdfunding campaign. We supplied a number of agricultural inputs and supplies, and since then, our communities in Antigua and Barbuda and Haiti have been starting with crops and the training of those rural communities. We also did quite a lot in innovation and technology. We continued our technical cooperation despite working from home, despite having to work virtually across the region. And there were several projects that we undertook in bioeconomy and composting, in creating apps for trade across the region at national levels. And we even developed, together with Mr. Dale and 18 artists here in Barbados, an extremely beautiful farmer's anthem, which paid homage to all of the farmers and workers who produce food and make sure that we have food during this pandemic time.
So your work is actually through government or through private organizations? For example, you have to go through government in order to get this support from IICA?
No, not only government. Our stakeholders range from rural farmers, communities, persons in education, our youth, our women, and our line ministry is the Ministry of Agriculture. IICA works to support the implementation of the Ministry of Agriculture's strategic programs on the ground. And we liaise not only with the Ministry of Agriculture, but also with the Ministry of Education, Tourism, Community Development. So it's direct support as well as support with the Ministry of Agriculture, with and through the Ministry of Agriculture.
So can you list some of the projects? I know you've got other projects going on around the region, specifically anything to Barbados now, as you know. Everybody's talking about food security. People were saying over the years that this is what we should do. We shouldn't rely on tourism. We need to spend more time on being able to feed ourselves. And that was evident during the pandemic, that food is king. And it showed us it was king during the pandemic. Yep. What are some of the projects that the Ministry of Agriculture is currently doing through IICA in Barbados, if you can kind of mention a couple of them?
We are working with the Ministry of Agriculture in the area of innovation and technology to have an innovation center to show users, to show the general public, entrepreneurs, the youth, what innovations can be used in order to increase and optimize efficiency in agricultural production. Technologies that they can use on small scale, on the large scale, things like fab labs, precision agriculture, vertical farming, hydroponics, aquaculture. We are also, at the moment, having our youth farm. Every year since 2012, we have had a youth summer farm program, and now we included 15 secondary schools who teach agri-science. We run 3 courses in crop production, a CVQ, level 1 in crop production, an NVQ, level 1 in livestock rearing, and a CVQ in aquaculture growth operations. We have 30 students registered this year, despite COVID, and the Ministry of Education and the TVET Council and the Ministry of Agriculture are our collaborators to have these students trained, assessed, and certified. So far, since 2012, we have trained and certified over 250 students, and some of these students have also found jobs and are pursuing careers in the agricultural sector. So those are 2 things. We're also working with the ministry to restart and resuscitate papaya production. We see fruit production important for food and nutrition security, and papaya is a highly nutritious fruit, so we're working with the ministry on that project.
Wow, you are doing a lot, I must say.
Yeah, we're working with the black belly sheep project also.
Well, I want to touch on that
yeah.
shortly, but before I touch on the black belly sheep situation and the fact that we probably are importing more sheep, lamb than we're using local,
which has always been the case.
Which has always been the case, and we have to find ways and means of obviously reducing our import bill. And you can't always be a big farmer. Not everyone has a plantation. Some people don't even have an acre. What can be done for what we call the backyard farmers? People who would have enough to supply them for themselves and maybe for their neighbors, make a little extra money. I mean, there are a lot of people who can actually get into backyard farming, and you don't even have to have a yard, if you understand what I mean. You can use different things in order to... Is there anything, any projects you can talk about, IICA, to support the backyard farmers? Okay, tell us.
Absolutely, yes. Under our special COVID fund, we supported over 9 countries across the region with establishing community farms, backyard farms. In the case of Grenada, for example, we worked with a home for abused women and boys. We worked with 2 homes. Here in Barbados, we work with 2 vulnerable communities in Haynesville, and we supplied the inputs for production, so there'll be urban farming. We also produced a 10-module training program based on our CVQ in crop production. And this year, we're expanding that exercise to 3 other communities. We're working with the Disabilities Unit and with 2 other youth groups in the Pinelands community. So community and backyard farming are alive and well. And this is what we've done all these years in Barbados. Everybody had a garden, a pretty garden in the front with flowers, and a backyard garden in the back with the pigeon peas and the seasoning and the green leafy vegetables and so on. And we're getting back into this. We're actually currently running a composting training program, which would use all of the materials that we normally throw away as waste to get value from that. And that is what is all in this, what we call the circular economy and bioeconomy. So we're reviving backyard gardening, community gardening. Grenada launched a full community garden network just last week based on our community gardening efforts last year.
And I understand you use things like WhatsApp groups and everything to set up in order for them to communicate and share their ideas. I mean, it may seem simple, but it's so important to bring these groups together using a little technology, something as simple as WhatsApp, for them to exchange their ideas and their concerns and have someone there to explain, because I read a little bit about it. But let's talk about compost and things like that. Where we talking about the peels off of cassava, because we're using cassava flour, so when we're peeling sweet potatoes and things like that. The fact that during a drought, it's hard to get grass, But then there are other things like river tampering that can be used, from what I understand. But the peels from the various fruit and the waste that we can use as compost, we can also use as feed. So how much of that are we doing and really looking into as a means of maybe even cutting back our import bill for feeds and finding other things to use right here in Barbados?
Many people don't know that we have organizations on the ground who have been working for a long time on this very subject. We have the Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute, CARDI, and they have been doing a lot of livestock formulations based on river tamarind and moringa and our local grasses. They have come up with feed formulations that are specifically formulated for our small ruminants, sheep and goats, and our other ruminant stock, so that we have the research capacity, and we have been doing research on those things. The peels and so on from backyard farming, each person should have a compost heap or a compost bin. The NCC, I know at one time, had been selling compost bins, and you can make your own compost heap from your trimmings in the yard, from your kitchen waste, and it's not only your cassava peels, it's all the peels, all of them.
But that's what I'm saying, is that I don't think that there's enough information, or I think we could just do more in terms of educating people, because even though we got to keep repeating it till it becomes a part of our culture. Because I can tell you, most of us, if you know, we have a neighbor that's doing that, but if we go like, oh, we're peeling this, and we just want to get rid of it. So the fastest thing to do is put it in the garbage and let the garbage people pick it up, because nobody wants the headache, or some people don't want the headache of doing that, smelling it, breaking down, because, you know, it's going to obviously smell a little bit. So there are people that may not want to, but then we can show them how best we can do that and keep the scent down, and how do you create your own compost. Even if you don't want it for yourself, your neighbors 2 doors down may want it. But I don't know if there's enough education going out about that aspect of things, because there are a lot of people who just, when they trim trees or trim the cuttings of the gardens, they try to stuff it in bags and expect the sanitation to pick it up, which, by the way, they're not supposed to do. So I think a lot of people just want to get rid of the things that you and I know about that can reuse. And some people just are not educated, in my mind, enough to do it. But when we come back, I
think it's a little more than education, you know. I think it's a level of consciousness.
But when we come,
because there's a lot of information out there, and we have apps, we have all sorts of information on websites of all of the agencies, but it's a level of consciousness that I am going to do this for my own health and for the health of the country.
All right, we're going to have to take a break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you about agrotourism and what it is. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We are currently speaking to Ina Harvey, Agrotourism Specialist, IICA. Ina, are you still with us?
I am.
Good, great. I was just wondering. Didn't see you in my screen, but you are here with us. What is agrotourism?
Agrotourism is the linking between the two sectors, agriculture and tourism, in order to create win-win opportunities for both. when I first started as agrotourism specialist, people used to say, what does agriculture have to do with tourism? And I said, don't tourists eat at least 3 times a day? And even over and above that, agriculture offers so many opportunities for linking the events and sites and attractions, our history, our culture, our food with the tourism sector. So many fabulous opportunities to develop rural tourism sites and attractions, as well as to increase the trade of the food that we produce, the food as well as the non-food products, the flowers, the compost, the horticultural products for use in the tourism industry. We spend a whole lot of money buying these things and importing them, and we can save on foreign exchange as well as build local businesses and build sustainability and really make tourism our business.
So if I wanted to get some support from IICA and not go through the ministry, but we have our NGOs, you know, can we write, is it like project proposal, write into the organization to see how best we can get support? Because do you do funding or do you do actual technical support? Or is there...
IICA is a technical cooperation agency. We are not a funding agency, but we do assist persons who want help by helping them to write proposals or by guiding them to agencies who do offer funding and technical assistance. And we work primarily through our Ministry of Agriculture so that we can go through our Ministry of Agriculture. We work very strongly with the ministry in linking agriculture with tourism, as well as with the tourism stakeholders in both the public and private sector. Our Ministry of Tourism, as well as our tourism BHTA, BTMI, their niche opportunities, committees, and so on. We are on those committees, and we're working to see how we can really achieve greater linkage between the agricultural and the tourism sectors.
Wow, there's so much on agriculture we have to talk about, and unfortunately we're out of time, but I can tell you that next week the Minister of Agriculture will be on, and hopefully maybe we might even get you to weigh back in, because right now, as we said, food is king. It always has been king, but we've now realized that we need to be self-sufficient. We need to be able to feed ourselves a little bit more, and we need to do a little bit more to lower the food prices and the import bill. But I want to thank you so much for being with us this morning and to give us some insight as to what IICA does, and that farmers can actually write to you through the ministry if you can and ask for some technical support, and go onto your website, because I see that you have a lot of information on your site to guide them, and a lot of information on the projects that you are doing in a lot of places, and in particular St. Vincent the other day. I think you just gave some seeds to the people of St. Vincent after the ash fall. So you're doing wonderful work, and I want to thank you so much again. Thank you for being our guest.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. So coming up next, we will have Peta, Alleyne, and Cassandra Crawford. They will be talking to us about media-related things from COVID, the public, and how do they send out information, and their personal thoughts about the pandemic as it relates to the information being shared. Do we have Cassandra there with us right now? And Peta? Good morning, Cassandra.
Good morning,
Peta.
Good morning.
Hi.
Well, we know about the pandemic sucking all of the oxygen out of the atmosphere. We're tired, overwhelmed. So, Peta, I can start with you. Your thoughts on the pandemic. How does it make you feel on a daily basis for the last year and a half?
It has aged me. You know, I take a look at myself this year and I think, I don't look like that last year. Because for starters, I am high risk. You know, when you hear of people talking about the various categories of individuals, and I do have an autoimmune disorder which makes me high risk, and so therefore the information that we received in the early days and throughout then the pandemic has really and truthfully, on a personal level, been very difficult to disseminate. And then because of my career, you know, it's also difficult because you have the added pressure of triple checking, at least I do, that the information that I am sharing is correct, not fake news, and that it can be backed up with the science. So that has been my journey for the pandemic.
Thanks, Peta. Cassandra, what about you? A young child, wife? How are you guys managing? Unfortunately, I'm not hearing Cassandra at this point.
Okay.
I don't know if you can hear me, Cassandra, but I'm not hearing you at this point.
I'm hearing you fine. I'm hearing you fine.
Well, okay, Cassandra, we're going to have to get that rectified. So just give us a minute. But I will say this, as a communication specialist, I'm not a journalist, not a veteran like these guys. They're very good at what they do. But we all know how important it is to get the information out and to get the correct information out. And I want both of them, when we come back, because we're going to, okay, Cassandra?
Hi.
Can we get a testing from you? Yes, I can hear you.
I'm talking.
Can't hear you now.
I'm hearing you. I don't know if you're hearing me.
I'm hearing you now.
Okay, good, good.
Thank you. Okay, so we were talking about you and your family and how has this virus, the pandemic, impacted you and your family?
You know, it's impacted us in the way that it's affected just about everybody. It's a frustrating thing. It changes life in terms of the way you know and love it. You have to be so much more careful with everything. Everything is a big production. And in my household, of course, the family leaders are both frontline workers in different ways. So for me, or I should say for us, while we both would have had our own various trepidation, and I think it would generally be the not knowing everything or as much as you possibly could about the vaccine. That probably was the most unnerving thing. But at the same time, for me personally, I'm sitting and looking at the world and getting all this information coming to me on an international level and on a local level. And I thought, well, I don't want to find myself in a situation where I have to find out the hard way. So I made that decision, and I was going to take this vaccine and go in faith and yes, let the science do its work as well. Because, you know, I know that at the end of the day, people will say, you know, the vaccines that we give our children, we've gotten accustomed to, but at the end of the day, we don't really know everything about those either, but we trust it enough to give to our young ones, and they're fine. So we have to start somewhere, and I'm just seeing people die. So many people die, healthcare workers being overwhelmed and knowing that they're leaving their families as well. I thought, well, if this is the little bit I can do, even if I have a little trepidation, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my part to protect myself, my family, and, you know, working the way we work, we still have to keep working. Yes, for me, for a part of it, I worked remotely, and sometimes we still do, but we still have to engage a whole lot. And, you know, as I was sitting here this morning, Joyanne and Peta just saw a little news story come in. And when it comes to that information, like Peta said, when you are sharing it, you want to make sure that you are getting it from a trusted source as well. So sometimes it may seem like you take a little long to say or to share something, but this is trying to ensure that when you share it, you know, it is credible information, because that is of absolute importance. People need to be able to trust the information coming from us, and that has always been a part of what our jobs mean, being able to share information that is actual and information that people can feel comfortable with taking and working with, and I want to feel like that myself.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yes,
Yeah.
we work in broadcasting, but we're, at the end of the day, when you strip it all away, we're all human beings, and we want to know what's happening. We want to know that we can trust the information we're getting. So it's about checking and making sure that we go to with credible sources.
But here's the thing though, how do you feel, and Peta, put this one at you first, you're working hard, you're getting the truth out there, you're doing a production, you're doing your show, and then all of a sudden, I mean, people are entitled to their opinions, don't get me wrong, but you're bringing the facts. No, they can't bring their own facts, but they want to bring their own facts. And and then you see all of the negative, and you're fighting so hard as journalists. You know that you've done all your research. You know you bring your passion and everything into the show. You have no political agenda, but then you get here, oh, this and she's this, and it gets personal. Because I know journalists get attacked, not just in Barbados, all over the world. You were pulled down for speaking the truth. How does that make you feel, especially in a pandemic? If you're going to tell them, look, I took a vaccine, they're going to want, oh, she for the government. Look, she wearing red, you know, that type of thing. So
all colors. we have to be so aware of that too.
You know, and I think it's stupid, but I mean, again, you guys live at Peta. How do you feel when, especially in this pandemic, you're trying your best, and you see so much negative comments out there on Facebook?
What you just said reminded me when we did the chat room, and I was hosting at the time, and at that time, this was the early 2000s. And we were looking at the NCDs. There was a big, rush of information and so on, and statistics about what they were doing. And I remember we had, I was moderating, and we had a roundtable kind of discussion with doctors and so on. And there was a member of the public who called in, and it was, and there am I, and saying, but look at you there in that interview, and you talking about they and so on. I mean, I and us, and I'm like, I beg your pardon? At the time that we were talking about diabetes at that point, how you could be sitting down there because you're part of the whole thing with the NCDs too. I said, I am. Because, I didn't have diabetes. I was, speaking along and so on. And it was almost like an attack on me as a big woman. How dare you talk about this when you have it? And I didn't. And that brought up then the discussion from the doctors there that, not all big people have it. So that what you said just now reminded me of you're coming from a level of talking about human beings, and there are many different types of individuals that make up this world. And I am the first person to say that I believe that every individual has a right for freedom of speech, depending on his speech. That's me. Anyway, and also the right of choice. That's my first belief. Yes. You have a right to decide what you want for you. However, I will say this. You don't have a right to decide what is right for me. And right now, your decisions are impacting my right to freedom of movement, to feeling safe wherever I go, once again to be able to talk to friends and family, and to be able to hug. I'm a hugger. I'm a people person. That's what this particular pandemic has taken away from me. It's made me eye people who are getting a little too close in my space with distrust. I hate that. And so therefore it's going to be a battle, yes, of choice, and also other people's right as well, So that's the difficulty of it. But I do believe in a person's right to choose and a person's right to speak, on their choosing.
Yeah. Well, Absolutely. We can get Cassandra's view here, but when we come back after the break, I just want to mention yesterday, Mom, if you're watching, I went to visit my mom, and when I was leaving, because, we were at a distance, And she's vaccinated, I'm vaccinated, but you know, I didn't want to impact her. And I felt so bad that when I was leaving, I said, I love you. And I couldn't hug her. I wanted to, because you know, there's still some vaccine breakthroughs, et cetera, COVID breakthroughs with the vaccinated people, and I wasn't sure. But when we come back, we're gonna speak to Cassandra a little bit more about how she feels about people saying certain things, and when she goes out in the supermarket as a journalist in a COVID environment, what happens there? We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. If you're just joining us, we are speaking to media practitioners Cassandra Crawford and Peta Alleyne. And very often we hear of people on TV and bringing you the programs and the news, and we don't stop for a second to ask ourselves, how much of a toll is this taking on these people? Because they have to go and get that information for you, and they have to be credible, and they got to make sure that they're on point and they don't make errors. What is that like for you, Cassandra, having to be on the, and I would say the spotlight is on you, because the government, whatever government, they expect the media to get involved, and particularly now in the pandemic, the government is really relying heavily on the media to get the messaging right. And you both are influencers, whether you like it or not. You have people that love you, Peta, you have people that love you, Cassandra, so it's a little bit of pressure on you too, to deliver.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
It's pressure, yes, but you know, first of all, I say it is what it is. This is where we are right now. This is the situation that we all have to manage. This is a situation that is real and we're all dealing with it. And I always say, like, nobody could have imagined this situation or planned to have to manage a situation like this. So for us, again, it is just of absolute importance to, first of all, when we get information, and here in Barbados and at the CBC, certainly our newsroom reporters are doing their part to extract the information from the various experts, as we do on our various shows, productions here as well. But we also can go to them directly. We focus on the Public Affairs Department. We work with the Barbados Government Information Service. Of course, we pay attention to what's happening in the international media and developments. Like one of the international stories that I'm seeing this morning is the fact that the Pfizer vaccine has now gotten full approval. And usually, you know, CNN is very much on that. They're one of the sources we will trust and also share with our audience here. So it is a matter of making sure as well that once the hard news stories come in our shows, it's important for me to make sure that it is simple enough or broken down enough as well for anybody to understand, and that is important. It's all well and good to be able to exercise, you know, your prowess with words, or to let people know that you know everything in the dictionary. But it's important at the end of the day for the person that you're talking with and not at understands what you're saying, so that you've actually communicated the message. And
I agree with you 100%.
When stats and numbers, you know, they're coming at people, it can be overwhelming for them too. It can be like, what? what does this mean really? So tell me this in simple terms. And that is a critical part of what we do. So
Exactly.
for shows like Face It and Fix It, where we have a little more time, shows like My 10 to 12, which is going to be on hiatus for a little bit, by the way. That is
I meant to
kind of
ask you
people's
about that.
business. That's where we have a little more time then to pull in the experts and
Right.
draw on their expertise and ask the questions that we know that people would want to ask. That's where we merge the broadcaster with the human being, like anybody else. You ask questions that you know a human being, another human being would want answers to. And for me, it's also important to be respectful to my guests and just try to make it a conversation that feels as real as possible, so that I know that that person watching us feels comfortable enough to also send us those messages and that feedback, so we can in turn make sure that we're satisfying the needs of our audience.
So here's the thing about information too, as I said, I am a communication specialist,
you
and we keep it simple. We certainly don't want people having to go to an Oxford dictionary to translate what we're saying. And I put that there not only for media practitioners, but for persons who have to give information, whether it be government or managers. There are some people who would want to sound as if they know the longest word in the dictionary. And it's not about sounding like that, because then you sound silly, because then there's some people who nod and go like, oh yeah, and they don't
what's
even
the
have
point
a
if
clue.
nobody understands what you're saying? Not that we have to
Exactly.
dumb down everything,
No,
but
but one of the things that we learned early, you know, in when you're being trained, is that, you know, you follow the KISS rule: keep it simple,
Keep it
stupid.
simple, stupid.
You know, so that's it, because that's how people, you know, get to understand exactly what is going on. For me, what I find I'm battling now is my age. So my tolerance level I've found is 0. So I've got to remember, you know, that everybody receives information at a different rate, a different speed, a different level.
Yes.
So, you know, with me, my particular show, They Link Up, which is starting back on September 3rd.
Plug.
Thank you
There
so
you
much,
go, there you go.
Cassandra. I loved how you did that.
My 10 to 12, the link up.
is, you know, I get the opportunity now to link up with the actual people who are outside of Barbados. You know, the movers and shakers in whatever arena, and getting their perspective, like from Germany, what's happening there, South Africa. It really and truthfully brings home to me, and I hope to everyone, this is a small world in which we live, you know, and we basically are having the same experience, you know, but just in slightly different ways. And the importance of getting the information correct, that is just paramount. And I'm hoping now, you know, that as Pfizer becomes accepted now fully,
no emergency use anymore.
no emergency use, which is why people had, and I like to say vaccine hesitancy, as opposed to being anti anything, because a lot of them aren't.
But Peter, let me ask you about that though quickly. Do you think then that now that it's been FDA approved, going that direction, that the possibility of people who bring civil suits if something goes wrong can actually happen now? Because I understand, because it was only for emergency use, that was the hesitancy from the big pharma companies.
From some people.
But once something is FDA approved, does that mean then that legally, if something goes wrong, people have a chance, going after the companies if they're not comfortable with the
Well, I'm
vaccine?
glad you say go after the companies, because some people seem to believe that they can go after the actual doctors.
No,
and
the companies.
government,
That's
and
what it
that's
is, the
completely
companies.
incorrect. It's you
And
go
the
after
company in
the,
this case
the
would be
actual
BioNTech.
company, and
Bio-
that would be
yes,
BioNTech.
BioNTech.
But you know, you're mentioning the FDA. That is the regulatory I won't even bother to try to hit it again, body for the United States of America. That is certainly not the body for the entire world. And there are certain, you know, like the WHO and the CDC, and they had some missteps in the beginning, you know, because this is new, it's a novel virus, you know, it wasn't seen before, this particular type of construct. So, you know, there has been some confusion, and unfortunately, some people aren't letting go of that confusion. They're using that confusion to create more. You know, and that's the unfortunate thing. But if you consider how we, and I mean we as this 166 square mile little ham bone in the sea, you know, has handled the pandemic, I think in the grand scheme of things, we've been blessed with those who've been put in the position to guide and to assist. They too are learning, you know, but step by step, we seem to have come out of this a lot better than other places.
Would you say there have been any missteps, and if you have had a chance to maybe speak to all of the various agencies involved with the communication, because, you know, lessons learned, what we could have done better earlier, is there anything that you would have observed that you felt that, all right, that was not very effective?
I have as I said, my tolerance. So just take this as I say it, especially since I have a lot of contact or make contact with a lot of the agencies. I think the problem that we have in Barbados is that we tend to be reactionary. We don't tend to be proactive. So when you see that something needs to be addressed, rather than be proactive and get ahead of it, we tend to stay back, and then only when it blows up react to it. And there's nothing more that annoys me as a producer, especially of a program, because I'm looking ahead and I can see, yeah, there may be some issues that can arise from this, but to get you to actually come and let's deal with it is so difficult. And that's across the board, not one specific group, not one specific person. It seems to be something within our makeup that we tend to react rather than
and
look
that's
ahead.
sad, and it's sad. And a show like this and all some of the other shows that we have on CBC, and I will speak freely when you invite people and they go like, well, there ain't nothing really happening on my end. Why we gotta go on? And I'm like, well, why would you wait for somebody to happen?
Don't wait. Come talk and share.
So, and that's what Peter's saying. So here now you have an opportunity, for example, to come on the show, talk about anything you want to talk about. That would allow for people to understand, instead of coming and poking at you. They're going to, oh, okay, well, I get that. You know, I know, understand, and maybe reduce the amount of calls, reduce the amount of complaints that you get, hence then improve your image.
Face it and fix it.
Exactly. And as you know, Peter, we're not here to throw anybody under the bus, you know. We're here to help the public. We're here to work with the agencies. There's so many people who call or message me or message you, even the radio.
Exactly.
NIS problems, water problems, light problems, road tax problems, whatever it is. And you have an opportunity now to come on this show and do something and say something and help the people, because right now the people want some help. But
I want to add to...
Go ahead. Go on.
Okay. I just wanted to add to that what you're saying and what Peter said, Joyanne, because that is one of the major problems, if there is a problem, when it comes to how dependent we are on getting the right people to come and talk about a situation. There were times that I've said to myself and said to colleagues, like, how is it that these people are the ones who are supposed to come and deal with things and they don't want to do it, or they're uncomfortable, or I don't know. So we need to do that. Just come. And then you would hear sometimes people might say, well, this person always on. There are some people who are so happy for the opportunity to come and share. and talk and be open to questions and be open to, if they don't have the answer, finding it and getting that information back to our audience. And I just want to say, as a producer and a presenter, I really appreciate that. And that's what we need more of, people who will come and not wait for a problem, but be available to share on whatever the situation.
And then when they don't come, they allow for social media to blow up with people with their own opinions as to what is happening at X agency or Y agency, and then it spirals out of control, and then they got to spend a lot of time fixing it and a lot of money too with ads, and when they could come here for free.
And PR.
And PR.
This is another arm of your public relations, in whatever sphere you're in, even if you are an individual within a certain arena, you know, to a corporation or a government agency. And so it really concerns me when people don't realize the value of coming and, you know, explaining just what you do, because sometimes what you do is confusing. And if we're bringing it back to the pandemic, you know, to the medical fraternity, sometimes, you know, we understand how busy they are, but sometimes we get a question from you know, maybe a patient or someone who is having a particular issue, and so we go to the source that we think might be best able to share that information, and you meet a roadblock. And I think that they touched on that a little bit last night in the People's Business, which was excellent.
Red tape.
You know, that red tape.
Oh.
If you know your job, you've studied it for goodness knows how many years, surely you should be able to speak on it. Why do you have to get clearance? You know,
exactly.
We are on the same page.
Listen, I want to butt in here for a second. Cassandra, you remember back in the days when I was at the BWA, and one thing I would say, no one, I mean nobody, I didn't have to go to anyone. I knew my job. I knew what was happening on the outside.
And we appreciated that.
Yeah, I never told any media practitioner, no, I can't, sorry, I got to check with this buddy. And that is the problem. If you know your job and you know what is required as a communications person, there's certain things you know you can't say, or should I say, how you put it to the public, I should say, because you should always be transparent. But it's how you put it to the public. I don't get it. We make calls and say, I can't, no, my thing tell me I can't, my manager says I can't speak to the public. That only makes people feel if you got something to hide.
I will approach you 3 times. After that, I'm respecting my own time. I'm sorry. You know, so as I said, my tolerance these days is minimal.
And this is related to COVID, by the way?
And this is related to anything. You know, because if you can't see the value of what you do, nothing I say can really and truthfully make any inroads into that. And so then I will just try and go to someone else and see if I can get the help and assistance then from them. And if they give the wrong information, you're upset. I'm sorry, I am upset too, but I did approach you first.
Well, Peta, Cassandra, we're going to be back after the break. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We are speaking to media practitioners Cassandra Crawford and Peta Alleyne. We're talking about the pandemic and about production and TV and radio, behind the scenes and all these different things. One thing I want to talk about is credibility. Very, very, very important coming from a media house. And that only comes from repeated information that pans out to be credible. Then you can say after a couple of months and think, you know what? Every time I turn on CBC and I listen to the news or watch that show, what they're saying is they're telling the truth, they're giving the facts. So I want to talk about credibility in particular with the pandemic, how important that is, not only as the station, but as the individual who's bringing the message.
That's
I
first.
think that where there's so much that all of us didn't or don't know or still finding out, it is absolutely important. It matters. We have to be able to feel that level of comfort with the information and share it as it is. That is why it is important to stick with the facts and, you know, leave your opinion in certain situations where you're seeking to disseminate information. Your opinion is not important in that setting. What is important is what is factual information that is coming from the scientists. If we're talking about the COVID-19 vaccine, information that then comes from doctors who have training, you know, virologists, people who understand any links to the situation that we're dealing with. You listen to those who are to deal with the specific situations. If it's a matter of the nation, then we listen to what's coming from the Public Affairs Department or the Prime Minister's office. We listen to that. We take note of the information that is given to guide us in the Gazette. You know, so it is absolutely important that you just stick to the facts and call on the experts that we have in our space, and we do have a number of them who can explain or break down information that is coming to us where that help is needed for our population. And I just want to add that in terms of that information and finding the right people to additionally share with us regional and international perspective so that we can give our audience a broader scope to look at technology, the technology that we have been able to employ, that we were able to spring into action with here at the CBC and still keep the broadcasting going when we couldn't come into the studio where I am today. You know, we are so grateful, and it continues to be of assistance. It has made it so much easier to be able to reach out to people wherever they are across the world. There was a time it was a lot more difficult for us to say, when somebody says, oh, but I'm going to be traveling, I'm out of Ireland, we'd be like, oh, when will you be back?
Yeah,
well, that
exactly.
doesn't matter anymore. We just need to know that you have good Wi-Fi
And that's it.
good connectivity
Those are
so that we can have
benefits,
the
the
conversation.
benefits
Dr. Charles
of
last
the
week.
pandemic.
Yeah.
But I want to look at the fact that
But
choosing.
I want to turn.
Go ahead.
Thank you. No, because I wanted to say that, you know, credibility, it starts with the individual first, though. Because I certainly wouldn't want anyone, when watching me, to say, oh, you know, she just bought the ratings. Because there are individuals within our profession like that, and that is unfortunate. When we hear, you know, credible, balanced, committed, those are the words associated with the CBC, and that is as the corporation, and for me, also my personal mantra as well. And so therefore, if you respect me and respect me as a broadcaster, then it means within that is my responsibility to be balanced, to be fair, to be truthful, and to be credible.
And
So
to be committed
therefore-
to that.
And committed to all
Yeah.
of those things. So
Yeah.
No,
it
I-
just means that it begins with the individual and who you see yourself as a professional.
Well, I want to
And
jump
want to
in
be
there
seen
like a Me Too movement here, because it's true. You're absolutely correct. Well, you know, I am a freelancer at CBC, but I do have Haigh Communications, and it's a communications company. But one of the things that I always try to maintain is who I am. At one, I'm going to try I can get the information, I can share it with you, I can be accessible. If I can't be, I can apologize, because if there's one thing I do not do, if it is I had to return your call and I didn't, I can go, oh shoot, I am so sorry, my bad. I do not look for an excuse that wasn't there. And I think people respect that. People do respect the truth. Yeah. And if you can't help them as a community, whether you're manager of a company, whoever they're choosing to communicate with the public, whatever message, you have to be credible, you have to be dependable. Because you could be seen as, people look at me, you, especially me, they'd be like, man, who's that, looking girl with all that talk? But if it is, they didn't know when you come to them, and you said that will be done, or we're gonna get that done, or we're gonna try, we can get back to you. That's how you build credibility, and people then should use people, and I mean this with, like, for government example, with their press conferences, not only that have the information, but the people that people like, they want to hear, they don't tune out of because they figure, man, I don't like his attitude, and there are people like that. This is Barbados, let's get real. It's small, and there are people who will come to your TV, and they may know some stuff, but people tune out because in their minds, I don't like that individual, which is sad, because we shouldn't really worry about the messenger. We should worry about the message, but the messenger plays a big part.
Now you're mentioning something about the message, and it is a very delicate balance.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you share, you might overshare. And when it comes to too much information, sometimes, even though you think people are tuning out, they're only holding on to certain words, and that in itself creates confusion. So sometimes you have to, the message that you are delivering, you have to give it in sometimes bite-sized pieces rather than in an entire big piece, because it can be difficult for some to process at that particular time. And sometimes in doing that, then people see something shady in it. Why are you only telling me this, and why aren't you telling me that? But you also have to recognize sometimes the enormity of the message can be, difficult to absorb in big chunks. And so it's a balance that
not very many people can pull that off. And if I might say, and I say this without being biased in any way, but who wants to take it however, then fine. I find our Prime Minister can talk for 2 hours and can still hold you. She could hold you. I sit down on my phone when the Prime Minister is speaking. Not very many people can do that. That is the honest to God truth.
Her oratorical
She
skills
does
are
have a way.
incredible.
I remember, I think in opposition a long time ago, she was on her feet for about 5 hours. And people are like, whoa, But the point is, there's some people who can do it.
It's a gift, though.
It's a gift.
That's a gift.
And the only person off the top of my head that I think has been able to pull it off, and she would say, but I mean, talk with her for so long, and they plan to be here for so long, but then she goes out, and then when we think she's done, she continues, and she's still grabbing you in. There are people who have to know, okay,
it's
2
the way
minutes,
she
5 minutes
speaks.
for particular people.
It's the way she speaks. It's also what she says, and she's talking to you, the individual, to you, the person, which is something that we were taught as well in Broadcasting 101.
What Cassandra said earlier, talking with you and not at you.
And you have to be able to read your room.
No, and I'm not talking about talking at you and to you. No,
okay.
That's not what I'm talking about. That when you see the lens of the camera in television, you are speaking to one person.
Just one person.
One person. You are in their home and you are speaking directly, eye contact, to one individual. You're not talking to 270 or 300,000 people. You're talking to one person. That is who you're sharing your information with. And that is something that a lot of people have to learn, and it takes them a long time to learn that. But when you're talking to that one person, you are making contact with them. And that's something that she does and does
It's a
really,
connection.
really well.
Yeah, it's a connection.
Connecting.
One of the things, though, I find that we're certainly not connecting with is our young people sometimes. Let's just say the town hall meeting we had.
I call them the Add Water and Stir Society.
Oh, dear.
That's what I call millennials. I'm sorry if I have some watching today, but that's what I call
Generation Z, Gen Z.
instant gratification.
But no, but here's the thing. I was in the presence in a safe manner, because people may think that I didn't have on my mask. And I do have a lot of respect. There are many guys on various blocks that I do know that are looking for jobs. They're not looking for trouble. I was with some of them the same day we had the press conference, the last one. And I said, I was on my phone and I was looking at it and said, you guys want to hear? Look at me like if I was from another planet. Like, why would you want me to listen? I said, well, you see, for them, they weren't interested in how that was delivered. So even though there were some people tuned in for information, we have to find other ways.
About the bite-sized chunks.
Exactly.
Because you have to know your audience, and you have to be able to talk to everyone, but you have to find a way that really and truthfully works best. And you know, so because they're always about instant, and they have taught us a lot about how to utilize 30 seconds and get the most impact
Or
there.
6 lines.
Or 128 characters.
Yes.
I have great respect for them because they've certainly taught this dinosaur a lot. But you know, in terms of getting that information and getting it there quickly, and so everyone has something, I think, to contribute, and you just have to utilize all of who you have and what you have and get that message out there as a true media practitioner. That's how we have changed these days. Now we're talking to Dr. Charles in California, even though, you know, we hoped he was here, but we still managed to, because of what Cassandra mentioned, Wi-Fi, using technology to get that message out.
Yeah. And further to the technology used to reach people where they are, we know that the youth, that group, that target audience, they're going to tweet, they're going to Insta, they're going to look at stories. So this is where, like you were mentioning, Joyanne, the influencers could come in. They just want the meat of the matter, the critical information, and you let somebody that they'll actually listen to. This is where the messenger really, really matters.
Yeah.
Let somebody who they'll listen to, you know, say it to them in the form that they will absorb it quickly and then create conversations in their spaces. So
look at President
what we have to
Biden.
do.
President Biden now, as of this week, is using 5 TikTok influencers to get the message to the millennials to get the vaccine. And, you know, one of them said, well, you know, I can't remember how many millions of people that he got more than Facebook and this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, wait, what? You know, so yeah, he's using now the TikTokers to get that message out there
But
to the Gen Z. Is it Gen Z?
Gen Z.
They're
Gen Z,
younger
I think
now
ones
than
that born in
millennials.
2001
Right.
till now, or
To
2012
those.
or something like
To
that. But
those. So
I'll say this, and on behalf of the guys in Ellis Village, people in Tweeside, Haynesville, Silver Hill, Six Roads, all of those guys. I missed out Nelson Street, Orleans. I'll tell you this, when they watch these shows, or they glimpse at Morning Barbados, I can tell you from listening to a lot of them, they feel as if you have to achieve in order to get on TV. They feel that because people are only talking about who's done well at university, who's done whatever, but what about them discussing their dreams and what kind of help that they can get? And whether we use this show or your show, or, you know, it's something that we really need to look at, because when I heard that, I was like, you know what, it's true. Nobody really sit down and talking to the guys on the block really to figure out what it is that they want to do with their lives. We highlighting who's done well or who's doing well. They want a chance to do well, but I think they just want a chance to
In
be
all fairness,
seen
if
and
you've
heard.
done,
I
but
beg
it's
to
not-
differ.
Agreed.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Tell me, Cassandra, quickly,
We've
'cause
had
we-
several shows, but
Yeah.
Peter's talking, so you go.
Yeah,
Peter.
go.
No. You go first, because it sounds like if you're saying the same thing that I am.
So you've had
I was
shows.
just gonna say,
Okay.
Joanne, like we've had shows that targeted youth. We've even had people who are youth themselves, who are connected to people in various spaces, host these shows and hear from them. Let them say, I believe on every time we do a show, we throw it out to you. You know, we want your comments, we want your questions, we want to hear from you. What do you want? So that is again an opportunity for persons anywhere to say this is what I want or be heard. When we see that engagement, that's an opportunity for us to build out on. We open our doors to hearing people's stories. But I'm saying we've had various shows that have given people, it didn't matter color, class, creed, but given them an opportunity to say and share. We've even
can
taken
think
some
of-
of those shows
Yeah.
into communities. Remember Talk to Me, Peta?
Exactly.
How long ago was
And,
that though, Cassandra?
that wasn't so long
ahead.
ago in the scheme of things.
But you know what? Okay, fine.
But-
I didn't think so. I stand corrected.
No.
But
And I take your point. You know, because and everyone has I think something in it that perhaps we need to step back, because if there's that observation there, it means that we're might need to step up a bit
Yeah.
more. But we're just saying that it's not the case that we haven't. We have. Maybe as you're observing, more of it needs to happen. But I know within my own experience, it's difficult sometimes to get them to open up the way that I would want them to. But we have
Yeah.
done it. Yeah.
Peter, and further to what you just said, I've been in situations and spaces that people probably wouldn't think I'd be. And when I'm talking with people, just talking, the camera's not on, you get a different person
Zanny.
sharing a different level of openness when compared with when the camera goes on.
And that happens all the time.
Like that person that you're talking about, sometimes they want to talk and they'll talk freely if you sit down with them under the tree and just talk. If a camera goes on, it's different. And then they feel censored as well. So there are a number of, I don't know, elements, dynamics that we'd have to consider, and we'd have to, if we're going to be real about it, then it has to be a real
Perhaps
conversation.
we need to approach
real
the
opportunity to hear them
censorship
properly.
board and talk
And
about
see what we can- but
updating
truthfully,
some
you
of the
might have to.
blockages that we have for in terms of what we can broadcast
You may
and
have
what
to,
we can't.
because I mean, honestly, that's what a lot of them are saying. I mean, some of them probably would not probably come on a show,
Yeah.
but we do have to wrap up a bit. So we're gonna wrap up because Reverend Dr. Rogers will be our next
Yeah, I have
guest.
to go back to my job.
And Peta. But final words in 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Good, Cass.
Cass?
Okay, so I'm just going to say we are going to continue to do our part, and we want to continue to engage you, hear from you. So please, please send a message. If you only do traditional, write a letter and send it. The CBC has not moved. It's still here at the Pine in St. Michael. If you want to send a message on Facebook, you can do so. Just let us know what you want. We are here to do our best to give you the information. And feel free to share. You know, just remember everybody's working to try to work our way out of this pandemic. So do everything you can to be safe and to keep Barbadians safe and essentially just to have an opportunity to be gainfully employed again. And let's just look to work away from this tough situation.
Thanks, Cassandra. And Peta,
We
final
want to
word?
return to normalcy or some semblance of it, you know? So please stay safe out there and follow the protocols. We've discovered, you know, and underscored and underlined: wear your mask, wash your hands, socially distant or physically distance. And, you know, if you choose to get the vaccine, good for you. If you don't, good for you as well, because you're making choices for your own self. But at the end of the day, I just want you to remember that you're sharing your space with other people. All right.
Thank you so much, girls,
Thank
ladies,
you.
looking lovely as always. Thank you so much. Thank you. And Peter, no, you don't look that old. I don't know what you're talking about.
I enter in a serious decade next month, girlfriend. Reality strikes.
Reality strikes. Anyway, you look lovely, both of you. Thank you so much. When we come back, Senator Reverend Dr. John Rogers, Rector of St. George Parish Church, as we discuss the inaugural virtual church service we had yesterday between Barbados and Ghana. We'll be back after the break. Or to send us a WhatsApp message 228-5562. You can also message us on our Facebook page, CBC Barbados, and put your comments there. Next on our show, our last guest is Senator Reverend Dr. John Rogers. He is rector for the St. George Parish Church. As you know, that CBC TV 8, they actually brought the show live to us yesterday on the 22nd of August. A church service, a virtual church service between Barbados and Ghana. And talking to us about that service and behind the scenes and how it came about is Senator Reverend Dr. John Rogers. Are you there with us?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Barbados.
Good morning. How are you, Reverend?
I'm doing quite well, and you?
Not too bad. I must admit I didn't get the entire service. but I watched a lot of it. There was one or two little technical problems with some audio from the Ghanaian side, but you know, you can actually still see the performances, etc. And I think this is an exciting time for Barbados and with its relations with Africa. It started with Ghana. So I want to hear your thoughts behind the service and as it occurred yesterday. What were your thoughts about it? What are your thoughts about it?
Okay, first of all, let me just thank the cultural and commercial attache to Ghana, Mr. Phil Phillips, who brought together a team of us from Barbados and Ghana. He would have approached me earlier in the year to see if we can have a link with the church in Ghana, and it's really Anglican Communion. We already have that link established, so it was just a matter of getting in touch with the church there. And we opted for Christ Church Legon, and the Venerable Ebenezer Larrier, who is the rural dean of that area, was instrumental in joining me in planning the service. Initially, we had looked at Easter and then Pentecost, but then I suggested, you know, at St. George, we hold the season of emancipation running from July 26th, the day of remembrance of the 1937 riots, down to August 23rd, the International Day of Remembrance of the Transatlantic Slave Trade and its abolition. And we thought that the Sunday closest to that latter day would be the best one to make this inaugural link, in that we are going back across the Atlantic, but this time we're not going with the darkness and the pain that we experienced coming here, but we're linking back as brothers across time and space. And so August 22nd was chosen as the date. Bringing the virtual parts together, we weren't sure how the technical work was going to be done, so we had some technical people from Ghana. We had Adoa Television, which is the Anglican Diocesan Television in Accra, along with CBC on the planning committee. But as you know, nothing is perfect, and yet we did have some hitches. But I believe more was good than was bad. So we give thanks to God for all that transpired.
Well, definitely it was more good than bad, that's for sure. I don't know if you go on social media, maybe you do, but CBC advertised the service. And the actual service, I must say, when people got to see the service, I was overwhelmed by the positive comments. Wonderful service, people thought it was great, but unfortunately, and again, people don't give things a chance sometimes, the actual promo for the service about a week ago, the comments were really negative. And to me, it was like fearful, if you want to put it that way. I don't think people understand and probably need to stop watching too much TV and get a better understanding of our brothers and sisters in Africa. I felt some fear, some of the comments. I don't know if the producer will be putting up some, but certainly there was some negative comments. What are your thoughts on those comments, and how can we go about maybe trying to fix those comments, and maybe the next time we have a church service of this kind that we probably will see something different?
Well, I didn't see the comments, to be honest, but I would say that for a long time, remember we're talking 400 years of indoctrination, of being taught that Africa is the dark continent, and we know of the harrowing experiences of the Middle Passage, and many of us were taught to practice what I refer to as collective forgetting, collective amnesia, to believe that that bond is broken and never to be reunited, and we should not look there. But the reality is that it is our ancestral home for most of us in this part of the world. Though we have been mixed with European and others, we still cannot let go of those ties that we had. And very instrumental was one of the readings which I particularly chose for the service, which was Genesis 45. That reunion of Joseph and his brothers. His brothers were put into slavery. When they finally reunited, the emotion that came out, the love that was there, the bond that was still there, tells us that it could not be severed. And though Joseph never returned to the promised land, except when he was dead, we are told they took his remains, but there was still always that bond between himself and his brothers, and to the point where he helped to save his nation. And so we're hoping that this is the spark where we look back across the Atlantic, the Middle Passage, that place of darkness, the graveyard for many of our people. But we look back to build a ray of hope rather than remembering it as the abyss of darkness that it was, in fact, for us. And it is something we must teach our children, that Africa is a part of us and we are a part of Africa. We cannot sever those ties. My ancestor, my first traceable one from Africa, Duda, I cannot forget her, and I cannot forget her homeland, you know, and so I believe that is the case for all of us here.
Well, certainly, and I'm glad you said that, because the comments, as I said, the good comments kind of overpowered the bad for the church service itself, because during the service we really didn't see any negative comments, and I'm hoping that some of the same people who did the negative, when they actually got a chance to watch the service, made them feel a little different. But it's important to know about how people feel about themselves. This is why, and I'm not trying to bring in the fact that we are going into republic, but it's important to know our history, to know what we went through, to know that, okay, we became independent in 1966, that we are only completing the course by turning into republic this year. And a lot of Barbadians, and maybe people a little bit younger than me, they probably don't understand or respect our relationship with Africa, or our ancestors, and what they had to go through. Today being the day that we're commemorating the transatlantic slave middle passage. I mean, what does that mean to young people? I mean, are we failing a little bit at the schools? Because they don't seem to, some of them, let me rephrase that, don't seem to really grasp it or care for it in the way that people maybe in my age group or your age group might have a better appreciation for the history.
Well, we must remember history is always told from the perspective of the dominant person, and for a long time we were the oppressed, and so our history was written for us. We are now starting to reflect upon ourselves and upon our heritage, and that's why yesterday it was so beautiful to have that profound presentation by Minister Jordan, which spoke about Coffee, the King of Barbados. And it really tells us that very early in the period of slavery, just a few decades after the slaves were already thinking about their freedom, already seeking their self-actualization as a people and not to be oppressed. Of course, that we're told was put down just as the Bussa Rebellion was put down, and we've had the harsh years of slavery, post-emancipation, colonialism. But now we're becoming a people who we've educated ourselves. We have the capability to do the research necessary to find out who we are and where we came from. And I wish to thank Professor Sir Hilary Beckles for the work he has been doing, and the history department throughout the University of the West Indies and all campuses, for enlightening and continuing to educate our younger scholars about this aspect of our history. It will take time getting it into our curriculum, getting it into our schools. I am one who personally believes that just how we teach nursery rhymes in school that come from other places, we can teach our Caribbean history utilizing some of the songs that have emerged out of our past. I do not think that any child in the Caribbean should go through school without knowing the Mighty Sparrow Slave, for example, or Black Stallions Caribbean Man. I think those things should be a part of our curriculum so that our popular culture helps to inform us, because not everybody will read a 500-page volume, but some people will pick up the snippets of their history from the music that we're offered. For example, I'm a big fan of these. You don't have to say you're sorry for all the wrongs that you've done. The damage is already done, but we are going to build ourselves as a people. We are going to move forward. And I think that the Caribbean is ripe for that now, and what happened yesterday is really a sign that we are seeking to transform that middle passage, which was a place of darkness, to a ray of hope, not only through our spiritual ties, but culturally and commercially and every other way that we can do so. Just strange enough, just watching the services yesterday, we were getting split screens. And because I was at the front of the church, I didn't know who was behind me. But there were times when the congregation in Ghana, I thought was our congregation here, because they look so much like us. And it just tells us, for so long, we've been told not to look there, when that is really where our ancestral bonds are.
Well, I think that it's a good start for the relationship between the two countries. I would like to see more of this. And what are your thoughts about having more virtual church services with other countries? I know, for example, because of COVID, we didn't really see a lot of it before. Because of COVID, we're doing a lot of virtual church services. I know the Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, they have not gone back into a physical space. They've continued their virtual meetings. But what are your thoughts on doing more of this with other countries? Do we need a little bit more spirituality going on worldwide? And sorry for crossing you. We normally do a National Day of Prayer and all those things, but that's fine for Barbados. But I think it's fantastic that we were able, and CBC was able to, together with Ghana, to pull off something like this, where you said you felt like if the people in the church in Ghana was like right behind you. It was so real, but yet they were so close, but yet so far. What are your thoughts about having more of these types of church services with other countries in order to build relationships?
The possibilities are numerous, and I believe I would encourage other denominations and other faiths to get involved as well. I was speaking to Brother Suleiman Bulbulia from the Islam community, and I believe that they're also seeking to make a link, because he informed me that at least 20% of the slaves that came to the Caribbean were Muslim. And so there's that tie as well. And so I would encourage all persons to try to make that link. As I said, as Anglicans, we already have the link established through the Anglican Communion. So it was very easy to make contact between the bishops and then have the service organized. Denominations may not have that type of inlet in any of the territories, but yes, we can certainly look beyond Ghana to Nigeria and other parts of the world. In fact, had it not been for COVID, I was supposed to be in Nigeria next week as a part of the Inter-Anglican Standing Committee on Faith, Unity and Order, which goes throughout the worldwide church and meets in various parts of the community, and then reports to the Archbishop of Canterbury about any matters that need to be addressed at the official level. And so there's already that link in terms of the communion, and I'll encourage other denominations and other faiths to do the same.
Well, as rector of the church, senator, etc., and I don't want to touch too much on COVID, but I want to ask you, what has it been like for you with the church having to be closed earlier on last year, and then there's a gradual opening and increasing little numbers, etc. How has it impacted you and your congregation at the St. George Parish Church?
Well, I believe that it is a common strand throughout all denominations that our numbers have not returned to the level that they would have been at before. And as you rightly mentioned, some denominations have not even gotten back out since COVID. At St. George, we have managed to maintain our 2 services. We've followed the protocols. When we were down to 3 people, we went down there and we did our virtual services with 3 people. When they said 10, we did 10. The whole drive was just to keep our congregation together in whatever way we can. And so now we're back at 100. Our people have been coming out, and we've managed to maintain that congregation. Of course, we are only about 50% where we would have been before, but we are very grateful and we understand the circumstances. I have encouraged the people who are vulnerable to stay at home when the protocols suggest that. Stay as safe as possible. There'll be time to get back out. If possible, we will come to you, but just keep yourselves as safe as possible. I have not brought my little children back out as yet because little children have a strange way of running and hugging you and doing all these things.
Yes, you can't really
we just want to make sure that they
them.
are as safe as possible. So we're doing everything to protect the congregation. We recognize that this is only for a time, and by God's grace, we will be reunited again, and we'll be able to worship Him in the congregation fully as a family. But for now, we'll stay safe. Those who are vulnerable, we've encouraged, just you can stay at home and view it online until you can get back out.
So, Senator Reverend Dr. John Rogers, I need to ask you this question. I've seen some comments on social media pertaining to a vaccine, and I've seen people said that God is my vaccine. And when people are going to their doctors, yes, to ask the question, but there are also people who may go to their church for guidance as to what to do. So I'm not, and again, I've said this last week, I will say this again, I believe in God, but I do not call myself a Christian because I believe that is for God to say that I am or not, truthfully. So, but I say that to say this. People come to the church, do they seek guidance in terms of the vaccine? And when people say on social media, and probably think this, that God is their vaccine, there is a saying, and I believe it comes in the Bible, that faith without works is dead. So you can have your faith, but you need to still take the steps in order to do the things that you need to do. What would you say to persons that would come to you and think that that is their solution without diluting the person's faith? I'm not disrespecting it, but I've seen it several times on social media where people are just saying, God is my vaccine.
Okay, in the Anglican and Roman Catholic traditions and Lutheran, we have the Orthodox canon, which is the Old Testament and the New Testament. But we also have a number of books which we call the books of hidden writings, or the Apocrypha. Really, they're a portion of scripture that emerged during what we refer to as the intertestamental period. And one of the reasons why they were not as part of the canon is because they were not written in what would have been considered the sacred language by the time the Old Testament community was coming to compile the text. And one of those books is the book of Jesus ben Sirach, or Jesus son of Sirach, which we also refer to as Ecclesiasticus. In our church, it is used on October 18th for the feast of St. Luke, who is the patron saint of physicians. And the particular reading we use from Jesus ben Sirach is Sirach chapter 38, verse 1 and following. And in that passage he says, "Give the physician his honor, for his gift comes from God. God has given him the intellect and knowledge. Praise to the Lord for diagnosis and for healing. There are times when life and death lie in the hands of the physician." And he also said, give the pharmacist his honor, because God has given him the knowledge to make potions from the earth for our healing. I know many denominations would not have access to that piece of work, but what it is basically saying is that God has endowed all people with gifts. And thank goodness through this pandemic, he has guided the pharmacists to come up with a vaccine in what we refer to as record time. In the same way, when we're sick and we go to the doctor and we seek diagnosis and we follow his instruction, I believe that I can trust my doctors and my pharmacists at this time. And that is the faith with which I go forward. I do not force people to take the vaccine. When the opportunity arose for the elderly to receive the vaccine, I called families and told them to have a discussion to determine whether they would want their loved one to have the vaccine. That is the way that the church facilitated. And once they said yes, we went through the process of sign up. But it was not the church's, I believe it was the church's call to tell people, yes, you should take this or you shouldn't. Mm-hmm. But our scriptures that which we use for, not for doctrine, but for teaching, the book of Jesus Ben Sirach, reminds us that doctors and pharmacists are endowed with their gifts from God. And as much as he has blessed them with those gifts, he has done so for our benefit.
That's a lovely way to wrap up the show, because I'll tell you this, we hear from the doctors, and of course, if you're sick, you go to your doctors. If you want spiritual advice, you go to your priest. If you want legal advice, you go to a lawyer. But this particular situation is sort of borderlines with medical as well as spiritual, because the combination of the two, I believe, is important for you to help you to make the right decision. I wasn't hearing a lot from the church, truthfully, as it relates to the vaccine. And people were saying, well, we're not hearing from the church. You know, we're hearing all these town hall meetings, we're hearing from the doctors, and rightfully so, we're hearing from the politicians, that's fine. But a lot of people are of Christian faith in this country, and a lot of people listen to their pastors. And I'm not saying to, as you said, no, you can't force anyone, but sometimes people just want to hear those words of comfort, because there are a lot of people who are lost right now, and they don't know what to do. And they rely on their pastors to not tell them what to do, but to give them some advice. So I'm really glad that I heard you saying what you said, because I haven't really heard, I'm not saying they haven't spoken out, and maybe they have to their congregation, but on a wider scale, I haven't heard anything from the churches on a wider scale. Has your church been able to publicly share information, or just with your congregation?
Well, we stream every Sunday, so there are people who would have access to our services and what comes from there. Mm-hmm. And I have good evidence that people do get stuff from there, but I won't say any more. Mm-hmm. We have been encouraging people just to speak together as a family and make your decisions as a family. But as I said, we also expound what Sirach said, that, you know, doctors are blessed with their gift from God, pharmacists are blessed with their gifts, and they're here for our benefit.
So the social partnership is represented then not only just with businesses and government, but by the church as well? Because I've been hearing that there's been a lot of discussion with the social partnership. That includes unions, private sector. Does that also include the church?
The church is not a part of the social partnership as yet. We're hoping to be at some point in time. I know that the Barbados Christian Council is consulted on certain matters, but I don't. It's the Barbados Christian Council that speaks on behalf of Christians in Barbados. They're reality to us.
Regardless of faith, denomination, that council?
The leader of a faith may speak, but at the level of governance, it is the Barbados Christian Council that speaks on behalf of the church.
Well, I'm a little surprised that the church does not have a seat at the table, but you're saying that that is going to happen shortly, or you're hoping for that to happen?
Persons have advocated for that, and we're hoping that that will come to the fore.
Okay, well, I would second that, because I would think that the doctors, in particular with the pandemic, with the doctors, the government, the church, and the social partnership, which is basically the businesses, should really come together and see how best we can manage the pandemic. But I'm going to leave some final words at you pertaining to not only the church service, but also some advice maybe to Barbadians in general. Again, a lot of people, against the background that some people are a little confused right now. We're not even talking about the vaccine. We're talking about the psychological impact of what this pandemic has brought to most of us. We've seen some suicides recently. A lot of negative things are happening. So I'm actually reaching out to you right now for some final words, not necessarily in prayer, but if that's what you choose to do. Something that you can leave us with that will give us a little lift.
Okay. The reality is that in the last year and a half, whether we realize it or not, during the period of lockdown and facing this pandemic, we have had a lot of time not only to sit and think, but we have been exposed to a lot of television and a lot of media that we would not normally be exposed to had we been moving around. And a lot of it has been in the form of protests and questioning the traditional forms of news and the media. And I do not know, because we haven't done a study to find out the empiricity of it, but I'm wondering how much people have been affected by that, to the point where we now question just about everything. And there's something sinister about everything, and we're ready to march, and we're ready to do other things. Just from that period of sensitization and that intensity of media. What I'll encourage people to do is, now that we have some time to move around, taking the beauty of the country, spend some time just to sit and commune with God, commune with nature, because He reveals Himself through nature, and reconnect with yourself and your God. We have been through a really rough time. I'm really concerned, especially for our children, who are missing an integral part of their socialization with their friends at school. And we have to keep a close eye on them and continue to encourage them to be positive, to think positive. We have to encourage those who have not worked for a long time, that as a nation we will pull together and we will look after each other. Yes, you may not have much now. You may not be able to see where the next meal is coming from, but together we will work together to ensure that all of our people are taken care of during this period. I know that many churches, including mine, have feeding programs and have been taking out hampers on a weekly basis just to keep people calm. So that's one less thing they have to worry about. If you can, connect with someone, give them a call, make sure that you have some communication, speak positive things to each other. And remember that we have a God who would never leave us nor forsake us. This is not the first pandemic that Barbados has seen. We had the cholera pandemic of 1854. And one of the positive things that came out of that, I'm told the Church of St. Luke, where I was before, the day they came out of the pandemic, they had a confirmation of over 30 children. So they had no Zoom, they had no virtual anything, they couldn't move around. But somehow they managed to encourage each other. They managed to keep the community together. And that is all I'm asking, especially for this is really hard on them at this point in time. Yeah. And the elderly who are at home and lonely. So continue, make calls, keep the communication lines open, speak positive things to each other. Today may be bad, but as Psalmist in Psalm 39 says, sorrow endures for the night, but joy will surely come in the morning. For the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases, and His compassion never fails. Every morning they are renewed. Grace.
Wow, thank you so much. This is the second show that I had that I might more or less reduced me to tears, but that was actually very nice and very uplifting, because like I said, we do need it. And again, I'm glad to hear that a call has been made for the church to have a seat at the table with government and the social partnership in relation to this pandemic. I'm surprised that it hasn't happened yet, but I'm with you on that one. I believe that the church is definitely needed to participate in this, and we do need to hear from the church, all of the churches, I believe, a little bit more about the pandemic in a positive way, even if it's that they don't believe in the vaccine. It's not about that only, it's about building up our minds to live again and to believe again and to feel that whatever we do, we can do, it's possible.
Life will go on.
And it will. And it will. So I want to thank you. I've been speaking to Senator Reverend Dr. John Rogers. You do have a long title, Rector for the St. George Parish Church. I want to thank you so much. And I'm hoping to bring you back, if the producer, because we still want to talk a little bit about Christianity a little bit on this show. I know that is a touchy subject, but the whole thing about, God is my vaccine type of thing, and these are the last days, I don't know, but it's an interesting subject that I would like to touch on at a later date.
I would remind people that the blessed Apostle Paul, for all his great faith in God, Luke the physician was with him all the time. In 2 Timothy 4, when he said, everybody has left me, but only Luke is with me. His doctor was there with him all the time.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we've got some closing notes, and I have a couple minutes, and I do want to mention a few things when we come back from the commercial. We'll wrap up, but I want to give you some final thoughts. We'll be back. Welcome back. Do you remember last Thursday's show? I believe I mentioned about a tree that we begged someone to please come and cut the tree down. The tree was kind of halfway out of its, the roots were up. It was just leaning over some wires in the road, in Darrell's Road, right outside of Panagraphics sign and outside of Risha's hairdressing studio and Takara's nail studio. And lo and behold, the very next day the rain fell, and we all know we had a lot of water, and the tree fell, trapping the individuals working inside of the salon. They couldn't get out, and then they were checking to see if anyone was under the tree, which thank God that no one, the tree didn't fall on someone. But I said all that to say this. We made a play on the show. Apparently the hairdresser called, the doctor in the office next door called, all of the people, the neighbors called, people called, and they complained about that tree because it was like that right after the storm, and nobody came. It is very important that agencies, please, when people call you for things like this, things like electricity, water, natural gas, trees falling, things that can hurt people, things that people suffer because they don't have, or leaks, running water, no water. You need to respond quickly, and that tree could have easily damaged someone on the street, in a car, or an individual passing. So I said that to say this, that when you share your information with us on the show and we share it with the agencies, we are hopeful that the agencies will respond. This is the reason for the show. So if you have a problem and you want to share it with us, White of Barbados, 228-5562 is the WhatsApp number that you send to the show. You can send it long before the show. We certainly will share the information with these agencies that we bring onto the show so that we can get them to help you. I'm so sorry that that happened. I'm so sorry, Risha and Takira, if you're listening, that you were trapped. You could not get home, and then people were saying, please get home. The roads are flooding. They had to wait until somebody could remove the tree, as well as their customers were trapped on the inside. So I'm hoping Again, agencies, you know who you are. When we call or if the customers call you, you need to respond. Too often in this country, we talk about technology, we talk about doing so many projects, but we don't talk about the human factor and the motivation that humans need to do in order to answer a telephone, in order to fix a burst, respond to your needs. These are the things that are killing this country. It's not only COVID. There are things that are actually pulling the country down, and if we don't respond to basic things to help each other out, we're going to need to have to practice that a little bit more. I know in the future we will hold more shows on customer service. We'll hold more shows on why people don't answer telephones in government agencies. We're going to speak to agencies like BRA because there's some people who are asking about their income tax return. We will be inviting them onto the show. Next week, Monday, we do have the Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Indar Ware. He will be joining us to talk about food security. We want to stay on this topic for as long as we possibly can because food is king. And I can tell you this, my experience at the supermarket was crazy. I don't even want to share what the bill was, but I bought vegetables, not a lot of meat, and it was a lot more than I normally spend. And I'm not sure what we can do. And we're fighting this battle about food prices. And we know it's not only about Barbados, and it's all of these external things that are happening with COVID that are driving up the prices. In addition to that, during one of our shows, we want to talk about all of the things that COVID has caused, but not the pandemic itself. Job losses, people at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital having to wait longer times, possibly impacting them health-wise. So many different things that COVID has actually impacted us with. That there's some people who are actually saying that more people are hurting for the things caused by COVID and not the actual virus itself. So we want to dedicate a few shows to that subject. We're going to look at the healthcare system. We're going to look at COVID at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and how it's managed. We're going to look at comorbidities, whether or not people are doing the right things, eating the right foods. How can we eat the right foods if we can't afford food, period? So all of those things that we need to discuss with the Barbadian public, but not only a discussion, but solutions. Because we really don't want this show to just be about a talk shop. We want solutions. We want people to call back and say, look, this has been fixed. The show has helped us. The agency has helped us. That is the importance of this show. It is not about you just venting. It is about you coming to say something and the agency doing something, facing your problem and fixing it in a timely manner. I also want to say before I leave, Mom, I'm coming to you after the show, and Sky, I'm picking you up also after the show. I like to talk about my family a lot, and I hope you do too, because during these times, it's difficult. It's difficult for me to hug my mom. I mean, I hug my daughter Sky because she lives in the same house, but sometimes even leaving from CBC to go and pick up Sky, I don't even want to do that because I'm worried about the clothes I'm wearing. I'm worried about making sure I sanitize properly before I hug my child. And I want to change that. And I'm hoping that you too, we want to get back to normal. If that's taking a vaccine, take the vaccine. If that means that you don't want to take the vaccine, but you just want to wear a mask and sanitize and physical distance, then do that. But whatever we do, we really need to get out of this pandemic in the fastest way that we can. And I'm hoping that the vaccine, together with the social distancing, or physical distancing rather, the mask wearing and the sanitizing, all of those factors together will help us to get out of this terrible pandemic. My name is Joanne Haigh. This has been Face It and Fix It. We'll see you again on Thursday. And don't forget, Minister of Agriculture next week, Monday, when we come back. Until then, stay safe and goodbye for now.